And let me welcome you back from wherever you went that you didn't disclose to us.
Thank you.
Good to have you back. Now, for clarity, I didn't say that, and I haven't said that there is no justification. My argument is that there are very fundamental issues around this intervention that we need to bring to the discourse, the debate. And the most fundamental, from your legal perspective, is the justness of the cause for ECOWAS to intervene in Niger. What you call the just cause, or jus bello, if I pronounce it well. And the basis for that argument is that here we are in a community which has pronounced itself to zero tolerance for any accession to power through unconstitutional means.
First step, and in January 2017, ECOWAS troop entering Gambia to restore democracy, Operation Restore Democracy.
Okay, I make a distinction. There are different types of such military activities. The Gambia one in 2017 was not an intervention. It was a preemptive deployment. Remember, before any soldier set foot in the Gambia, Yahya Jammeh had already left. So that demonstration of the use of force, thanks to the geography of that part of Africa, the Gambia is like the tongue in somebody's mouth, in the mouth of Senegal. So Senegal's presence, per the architecture of the ECOWAS standby force, constituting the Western vanguard, was already in a position to more or less encircle the Gambia, with the exception of, let's say, the Atlantic coast. So that deployment was not an intervention. It's very different. And by the way, it was by a civilian leader who was being recalcitrant, or whatever the English word is. Very different from Liberia, which had been invaded by Charles Taylor through Cote d'Ivoire, and which saw the community divided at the time. So the deployment to Cote d'Ivoire was to counter the invasion under the pretext of going to extricate Ghanaian and ECOWAS citizens. Now, that deployment cannot be compared to the situation in Niger. And I've already alluded to the argument that out of 14 coups, right? Why have we all of a sudden become very wise that we will not allow Niger to go, if you like, unpunished?
But there must always be a starting point.
Yeah, let me make this point. My argument is that the black ant that the Akans call Nkrani, the village wisdom among the Akans is that when you are in the Nkrani, the black ants, that is not when you pick the black ants. You step aside and then you pick. So the best course of approach currently is to use diplomacy. Then after the dust has settled, you come back, and I'm writing that in my paper, sit down, bring your policy practitioners, bring your experts, bring your politicians, your diplomats together, and then find the reason why there is a resurgence of coups in Ghana, and similarly, why the civilian tendencies towards third term and constitutional re-engineering is also on the increase.
So far, diplomacy doesn't seem to yield much. We are told of the delegation sent by the Nigerian president, ECOWAS, head, and they were not allowed beyond the airports. I mean, to some extent, that's such an insult, isn't it?
Because Samson, everybody that you speak to, there is a playbook for ECOWAS. The ECOWAS playbook is that when you have situations like Niger, which had applied previously in the instances of coups, first of all, you suspend, right? Secondly, you sanction. Thirdly, you engage constructively. And in the ECOWAS books, and I'm asking anybody who wants to read, to go and read the ECOWAS Treaty, Revised Treaty 1993. Read the protocol that we're talking about, 2001. Read the Conflict Prevention Framework 2008. Samson, intervention is not mentioned anywhere. However, there is a provision, what in law you call the omnibus clause, which says that in any other operation that from time to time the Mediation and Security Council can or will mandate. Now, we should not hide behind that omnibus clause, because in all of these protocols, we talk about enforcement of sanctions. That is not what we're going to do in Niger. We talk about peace building and talk to the experts. Peace building are measures like we are doing, National Peace Council, using chiefs and so on. It's not coercive. You say it. So why are we going to use force, intervention, what we are referring to as a Chapter 7 operation? And meanwhile,
as we understand, we'll get there. As we understand, they don't feel that there's a necessity from their advice from their attorneys. They don't feel there's a necessity to trigger an Article 7 process, and that they can go on by simply informing the UN without requiring their permission to, so to speak.
That is not the case, Samson. The wording of that phraseology, I believe in Chapter 7 or Chapter 8, is that as soon after, but there are circumstances when a country can be aggressed. And when a country belongs to a body like the ECOWAS, an aggression against that state is an aggression against all member states. So your response will be immediate. This is not the scenario that we have. There is time. You see what I mean? He says we have a D-Day. We have not arrived at a D-Day. Because you cannot have a D-Day when you don't have a force commander. The decisions arrived at in Accra per the ECOWAS standby force arrangements and ECOWAS's protocol will now have to go to the Mediation and Security Council for approval. And the Mediation and Security Council is conflated because when we established it, the 50 member states that, like their accounts, when we are two to set a trap, then the two of us must go and inspect the trap. But there are political reasons why they thought that way. Because there are some regional role players who want to be in that equation since inception. As we speak, per the African Union Protocol 2003 that established the Peace and Security Council, you serve 3-year terms twice or 2-year terms twice, then you step aside. Since inception, Nigeria has been a member. Complete violation of the protocol. You cannot belong to a sub-region where you establish core values and principles, and some members are so powerful that they don't be part. They are not part of the.
Thank you very much.
These are some of the fundamental issues.
Right. Kindly hold on there for us. And clearly, Col Festus Aboagye is straightforward about his points that there is no just cause.